finishing up database maintenance today. So let's go to Access 3, and we're going to work through finishing up what we need to do for maintaining a database. So, what have we covered so far? What do we need to do? If we have a database, what are some of the important things about databases? If we're using one, what do we need to do? What's important to do with databases if you're going to use it or make changes? Before you make any changes, save it. You want to have a backup. And in any company that's using databases, they better have their IT nerd doing a daily backup if there's anything important in that database. I will bet you, well, Google has gigantic databases and they're spread across the planet. I wouldn't be surprised. I would expect them to not only be having backups, they have multiple copies of their database based in different countries, because somebody in India is not going to come to all the way across the internet to the U.S. if there's one database in the United States. They keep their database, and they call it distributed data. Well, when you're working with a tiny database like we are, it's up to you to make a backup, just like you do any file. Do a copy of that database, and remember how that's done. I would use my little file browser, and I go find where I keep my database. And let's see if I can find where I keep my database. There I am in section 1, and I have I'm pretending to be Mr. Smart. There's my database. I could do a Control-C copy, Control-V paste, and there I've made a copy of that database. It's that easy. Now you could drag it over to your OneDrive. Remember the problem we've had with the OneDrives? Sometimes it'll just blow up on us. So I do not recommend using it from your OneDrive, although I think some of you are. Just be ready for trouble. I have seen, not constant trouble, but regularly someone opening it from their OneDrive and it just freezes up on them. Don't know why. Copy it to your documents folder if you ever see an issue with it on the OneDrive. I would treat the OneDrive as backup. I would not use files live. I would not open it from the OneDrive. I would copy it. But if you are using it for the OneDrive, it's your own fault. You've been given the warning. The worst time it has happened is right in the middle of finals. Somebody decides to open their file in some strange place, and it freezes up right at the worst time. So make a copy, put it in your documents folder, work on it, and then drag it, click and drag it for the backup. So here we back are in Smart AC3. Let's open that baby up. And we'll go down to, what did we do here? We did that update query, right? Remember that update query? That dangerous update query. I do not want to run the update query. It will give me a warning if I try to run it. I'm going to right-click, design the update query if I ever want to go back and look at what it does. Remember the update query? It's going to update every veterinary vendor's product type. It's going to be updated to VAC for vaccination. If I ran it once, let's see if I ran it once. There's the, let's go back to the table. Let's see if I look at my veterinary vendors table. There I see all the product types have been changed to VAC. So update queries are very dangerous. That's why they have the exclamation point on them, because they are going to make changes. If it does make a change, it usually will warn you and saying, I'm going to change this. Are you sure you want to do this? Okay, after doing an update query.
Mr. Manning.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't want to do it after I click yes to modify the data.
What are you modifying? You're changing the field size on something, are you? Or are you running the update query?
Running the update query.
Really?
Click yes, it says you're about to update 5 rows. You can't use undo command on this.
And then you say okay and it doesn't do it?
It doesn't do it. It
Really?
doesn't even open it.
No kidding. Well, we might have to do a little troubleshooting on that. Let's see. We did the filtering. We'll go to the next one. We'll come back to that. As long as you have your update query, I wouldn't worry about it. You can also, can you manually, is your table open or something? Do you have your table open? Sometimes it doesn't like to do things if you already have something else open. That's
Oh,
one of
okay.
the first things I check. And with that in mind, I'm going to close my veterinary vendors table before I do anything else here. And let's see, what do we have doing? What are we doing after our update query? We have that. We changed. Remember what we did before changing the structure? Let's take a look at what we did. What was the veterinary? We did the design view. Remember, did we add a? Yeah, we added that product type field to the veterinary vendors. And remember what else we did? Over here in the appointments design view, we added that the service abbreviation using that whole lookup table wizard. That's all in there by now. And now what do we want to do? We change some field sizes. We've already done that. The next thing they want us to do, after adding a new field, we ran the update query. We added the calculated field. We did the update query. That was our mass changes. That's where we ended. And now we're going to do some validation rules. Remember, this is the treasure of our database. The data in our tables is very important. And we want to make sure that they can't change something or enter something that's invalid. So what we're going to do here, we're going to first of all go to the field size of our zip code in the veterinary vendors. Let's check this out. Veterinary vendors table, right-click design view on that. Right-click design view on veterinary vendors. And I'm gonna close the ribbon there so I can see a little bit more of my properties here. We're gonna go down to the zip code. And remember, this was a table we imported. Somebody left the field size to be the default field size of 255. We want to change that to something a little smaller. The reason for this is, as we enter lots and lots of data, if we're reserving a huge amount of space for something that doesn't need to use it, we're wasting space. When we have a tiny database like we do, it's really not that big a deal. It's more of showing you how this field size, if we can shorten it by just typing 20 there in the field size right there. Click and type 20 in the field size. And then, once you save it, Control S, it will tell you, oh, by the way, if you have any zip codes longer than 20, it's going to throw away. Well, I'm pretty sure I don't have any zip codes longer than 20, so I'm going to click yes and continue. It reminds me that I can't do an undo, so I better think, do I have a database backed up in case I really mess it up? Click continue, and it's happy to change the field size shorter. If I want to actually look at datasheet view, zip code hasn't changed because they were all 5 characters, but it lets me type up to 20 characters, so we don't see any effect on our existing data. Now we also want to make sure that we require the vendors have a name. We can't enter a veterinary vendor without giving it a name. So going back to design view, right click design view on my veterinary vendors. I can go to the vendor name, and down here in the properties I can say toggle that to from a no required to be a yes. We're learning a little bit about all these properties. Don't worry about memorizing these properties. Just know that these properties can affect how things work when I try to enter data. Now, if I don't enter a vendor name, leave it blank, it'll say, sorry, I can't let you do that. You must enter something there. So we have made vendor name a required field. And before we leave, we also want to make sure that in quantity, that they don't type a bad value in quantity. Right now, there are no rules about quantity. They can type any number that is single precision floating point. Well, that means they could actually type negative numbers in here if they accidentally did a typo. Oh, question mark.
So in the general, in the field properties, like I don't have the same thing as you do. Like the
Under which field? The
I don't have
zip code?
as much content as you do.
Oh, do you have field size single?
Come here, look at this real quick.
You are on the quantity. No, because you have the ID selected. You have to select up above. Select the quantity. Click on quantity. Now they show up. Yep. Yeah, the properties of the different fields will show up once you've selected. So, in order to not let somebody type in the wrong thing, some negative value, which wouldn't make sense for a quantity, we put a validation rule here. And we just simply type it like we would something mathematical. We type greater than 0, and the word and a space, and the word and a space, and the word less than equal 1,000. So it won't let them type a 0 in quantity, because that wouldn't make sense. Why do we have a vendor that supplies us nothing? So they want it to be greater than 0, less than 1,000, and we can add a validation text. And we're going to be a little friendlier than the book says. We're going to type, please enter a number between 0 and 1,000. They suggest a non-sentence must be greater than 0, at most 1,000. Sounds a little bit terse to me. And us nerdy types have a tendency to put messages that are intimidating and either techno-garble or mean sounding. Microsoft is very good at that. They type warning messages that are completely meaningless, and you get a lot of them in Access. You're going to type messages that are friendly, using the word please, and make it as simple as possible. We need a number between 0 and 1,000. And now I can save this and go over to Datasheet View, and let's see how this behaves. After adding the validation rule, greater than 0, so a greater than arrow pointing to the right, 0, space, and less than equal 1,000. Now if I go to Datasheet View, saving my table, the rules I have applied now have to be applied to the data. So it does do a little warning, by the way, I'm checking that your rules are being followed. And now let's see what happens if I try to enter a quantity of a negative number over here in quantity. Let's see if I can make this -3. There's my validation rule popping up, being a friendly message rather than a scary, rude message. Whenever you see this kind of message, you have to click OK. You can always do a Control Z to take it back to the previous value. The Control Z is your friend when you get those messages about entering data. Just for fun here, let's go add a new record, and let's give a not give it a name. Let's put a 2570 Asbury Road. And try to go to another record. Uh-oh, it won't let me leave that because it's saying there must be a value. Remember how we made the name required? That's what happens when you make a field required. It'll give you this message before letting you leave that line. Now I can do a Control Z undo to stop adding a new record, or I could type anything in. There are no validation rules for the name. It'll let me type anything crazy in the name. So it's not a very good validate. There's no validation rule. It just says there has to be something there. So these rules don't guarantee that I'm going to have good data. It just guarantees that there will be something there.
Mine is asking for a number between 0 and 1,000 when I try to click out a vendor name.
Yeah, because you have something entered there. If the quantity is 0, let's see if I try to enter a name. And let's see if it'll let me leave. And leave the quantity at default 0. Does it let me leave? Oh, no, it must be greater than 0. So there's the validation rule for the quantity.
No, when I try to click out of the name, so I click on vendor name and then
You type something there?
oh, that is weird.
You can't leave that record until all the validation rules are passed. if there's a name, it still has that default value of 0 for the quantity, so it won't let you leave. So what we might do is, instead of leaving the default value of 0, have a default value of 1 that is most likely. In the book here, they don't change the default value. Oh, they change a default value of the treatment type. So I can do a Control Z until I've stopped entering a new record. Now I can come back to design view.
My vendor name isn't working right.
Just do a Control Z till there's nothing in there, and go to quantity, and you have to enter something, otherwise it won't let you go if you're actually trying to enter a new record. You can't leave it until all the validation rules have passed.
It has quantity correct, but it isn't making me insert name. So in design view, vendor name required yes.
Required yes, yeah.
Over here, with new, no vendor name, 26 blue.
Yeah.
Quantity 1.
Yeah, and it's taking it. So now it requires a name.
So it only requires a
Yeah. It does its validation rules at the time you try to leave to go to another line. So there's no name there, or is there a space there in number 7?
There's no space.
Why does it let you leave? I think there's a space there on 7. And see if you do arrow up or down, does it let you leave? Oh, I'd say there's a bug in the Mac version.
This isn't the Mac version.
Oh, this isn't the Mac. It's a bug in the Mac person. It recognizes you as a person that uses Mac. I guess I couldn't explain that. It should have not let you blank out a name. But don't worry about it. The main thing is you know how to mess with validation rules. Now back in product type, we're going to add another validation rule. In product type, we're going to have a default value. Now it's a little strange here, so getting back to little memories of Excel, they want us to type the equal VAC for the default value. And although you could do a limit to list, they want you to have a validation rule. Now we're going to add a validation rule as well for the product type. The default, and it puts quotes around the VAC.
Quotes or stars?
I can't tell. It looks like quotes to me. Are they stars? It put those in for me. I'm not sure why. And the validation rule is equal VAC space or space equal MC or space equal SUP. And if I hit enter, let's see if it adds quotes around them for me. And the validation text is must be VAC, comma, MC, comma, or sub. Now I think this is a very silly thing to do, but they have us do this in the book. I would have just gone to the lookup and say limit selection to list, and I wouldn't have to tell them anything. They would just not be able to type anything. So this just shows you can have a friendly rule, and I'm going to say please type. I'm going to put again, try to be more friendly. Please type only, or how about type one of? I'll just type only those. I think a better way would have been have the lookup limit to list. And let's see, is that hard to find? If I go to lookup, is there limit to list? Oh, look at I could just have turned limit to list to be yes, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the validation rule. Let's see how that works. I'm going to go back to datasheet view, saving my changes. The validation rules are going to be applied. And now let's go to product type, and look at that. I can't even type anything there, so I don't even have to worry about the validation rule. I think that's a much better way to do it. So I just turned limit to list to be yes. So There you go, book. I think that's a better way. But we know if we had to, under general, we could choose a default value, add our own hand-typed validation rule, which is the same as limiting it to the list, and then the nice friendly message. If they ever try to type something else, give them a little message about that. Okay, so we're adjusting validation rules, saved them, and let's see here, are we doing anything else in the veterinary vendors? We updated a table, we see how the validation rules work, I've already showed you that. And we're just changing a spelling in the Gaines Vet Supplies. Just doing a basic change. So I'm going to close, let's see, I'm going to go to datasheet view of this veterinary vendors. And Gaines Vet Supplies has the wrong address. I'm going to stretch that out so I can see the full address. We're going to change their address to Boulevard, or adding Boulevard to the end of their address. And spell Boulevard is a challenge. B-O-U-L-E-V-A-R-D. Strange name. Boulevard. I lived on Sioux Boulevard all of my life. S-I-O-U-X. And now if I leave it, now I know it's happy with it. Changing the data in the table. That's something very simple to do. I don't know why they did that right in the middle of doing more complicated thing. We use the lookup field. Multi-value lookup field, we messed with that. I'm going to skip over that because we want to get a few other more challenging things done here. In the totals in the data sheet, we'll do that. So under, are we still in the veterinary vendors? Yes. In the veterinary vendors, let me go ahead and open that ribbon up just so we can see it. The options we have. We are showing all my fields in datasheet view, and I can enter new things. But I would like to see totals in here, and let's see, how do I get totals to show up? Looking for my, where is the totals? Am I in the right place? Try the home tab. There we go. On the home tab, when I'm viewing my data in a table, I can turn on viewing totals of fields that can be added together. It won't do totals of any fields that contain names, but watch what happens when I click on totals. I was expecting to see totals for this row to show up. Oh, I know what I have to do. Once I turn on totals, I have to come down here and tell it what total to show. There we go. The very extra line there, I can tell it, what total do you want me to show here? And I'm going to do the sum. And now I see the total of my inventory. Remember how total amount was calculated from quantity times cost? So I'm sort of doing something like my Excel spreadsheet. I could do total cost here, but it's not really meaningful because cost times quantity is what's meaningful. But if I say, what's the total number of items in inventory? I could give you the sum of that. And maybe the average cost might be interesting. I can't do this until I turn on totals. Without totals turned on, I don't see that extra little row. So when you're dealing with a table that has lots of numbers, and someone says, how do we find out the total of our inventory? Well, if it's an Access database, toggle that and tell it, yes, give me the total here instead of the maximum, minimum, standard deviation, variance. The sum makes most sense on this particular viewing of the total. We're not putting new data into the table. We're just having Access show us that information as I'm viewing the data because it's useful information. I don't have to go hire someone, pay them $100 an hour to write the SQL query to calculate the totals. I can just do 2 clicks, actually 3 clicks, totals, and then click and then pick the sum. And I have it showing me my total inventory value. My accountant will love me. Rather than paying someone, I can, with a few clicks, get the sum in my database. I'm not going to worry about changing the font. That's trivial. We want to get to this very important relationships. Gonna jump ahead here. Just using them, multiple values on multiple rows. Well, we better do this because we haven't done this before. Let's see, are we writing a new query or stat? Yeah, we're gonna go back and write a new query just to refresh our brains on using queries. So I can turn totals on or off however I like when I'm viewing that, and I can close that table, saving any changes. Remember, with Access, you like to close things when you're done with them, or Access might complain later when you're trying to do something else. Now, we want to create a query on the appointments table. This is partially a review preparing you for the final. You will have some queries to write on the final. So the instruction will be create a query on the appointments table using appointment ID, patient ID, appointment date, and treatment number. You'll have those instructions, and it'll be up to you to do the query. Okay? Create, query design, and it said the instructions were create a query on the appointments table. That means show the appointments table, and then close the show table dialog. Now, it does say we want to see the appointment ID, or include the appointment ID, double click. Include the patient ID, double click. The appointment date, double click. Oh, double click. And treatment number. Treatment number. Before I need to do anything else, I can view the data that is displayed in those columns. No criteria, it's just a query showing me that data. I can toggle between datasheet view and design view. And now, as I go further down, I'm going to save this now. Let's say that's going to be saved as M03Q01, but I'm also going to include the page number 3-42. So let's do a save, Control S, AC 3-42, and the book gives us a query name, strange name, M03 for Module 3, Q01, the only query so far in Module 3. And what is this? This is the query on veterinary vendors appointments. Vendors appointments save. I'll just call it appointments. So I have this table, I have the query saved, and now I can view it by running view, and I see treatments going with various appointments. I could add treatments in the appointments table. Remember how I can add treatments up here? Multiple checks. Uh-oh. Treatment number was supposed to have allowed, I think they meant service abbreviation is what we can see. I think they meant to show service abbreviation. So let's go back to our query and show service abbreviation, because we wanted to see that. Let's go back to the design view here. Add also service abbreviation. I think there's a typo in the book. Treatment or service abbreviation. Let's see that now, and we got. Now we see all the services that are for that appointment. It looked like in the book they actually may have modified treatment number, but I'd rather have you know how to create a multiple select, and we don't need to view treatment number because we're going to have multiple treatments on an appointment. So I can either turn that off or delete that field from the query. And now I have a query that just shows me what services are for specific appointments. I can change it from the query. This is a little bit of a strange thing in Access. When I write a query, it actually lets me change data in the database. I can actually change the data by just editing that. And it's not, oh, there, fine, it showed up. I can actually change from the query. most database languages only get data with the query and they don't allow you to change the table that way, but Access actually lets you do that. If I go back to the appointments table and actually look at the raw data, I see that I have changed the actual data in the table when I change it in my query, datasheet view of my query. So that's just demonstrating how I can see the multiple appointments or the multiple service types for each of my appointments. And that's what that query was about. And now we come to a very important concept. I'm going to close this now, saving any changes. And now we're going to talk a little bit about relationships. At Emmaus, very important topic, especially when we're dealing with databases. We have multiple tables here. Let's take a look at these tables in a special tool underneath database tools called relationships. The relationships between our tables. I know it's kind of scary. You can handle this. We want to view relationships between all of our tables. So one by one, double click each table in your database. Might as well put them all in here and close. And I accidentally added veterinary vendors twice. I'm going to select one and click delete. All of our tables are here listed in our relationships. Now, there is one table that references many other tables. Can you see the relationship between appointments and any other table? I think I want to put appointments central because appointments are central to our information in our database. You see how appointment ID is referenced. Well, actually, we're not referencing that, but the appointments table is referencing multiple things in other tables. See patient ID? There is a relationship between that and the patient's table. Here's how we actually tell Access that that is an important relationship. I click on patient ID and I drag it to patient ID in the patient's field. This is establishing this relationship. It's saying whenever I refer to a patient ID, it is clearly related to the patient ID in the patient's table. And there's this thing called referential integrity, a very important part of relationships. When I refer to a patient ID from my appointments table, that patient must exist. If I didn't enforce referential integrity, I could type any number whatsoever for a patient ID, whether or not they existed or not. And I could embezzle money from my company, claiming appointments and being paid for them that for patients that don't exist. So we want to enforce referential integrity. We cannot refer to a patient unless they are existing in the patient's table.
What does
Now,
the one-to-many mean?
One-to-many means for every patient, there may be multiple appointments. That's a database thing that you don't have to worry about in this class. But if you're thinking about database design, that is an important relationship that database designers make whole diagrams of all the relationships. Now, what other treatments or what other relationships do we see? Well, date and time. Well, those aren't referred to in another table. Service abbreviation. That's not another table. Veterinarian. Oh, the veterinarian is associated with their veterinarian ID. So that relationship is important. Veterinarian to veterinarian ID. And I do enforce referential integrity and create that relationship. And let's see here. Treatment number, veterinary vendors. Where's our vendor? Treatment number. Do we have anyone referring to a veterinary vendor by their ID? Owner ID. Oh, here we go. Patient, over here in patient. A patient has an owner ID and referring to the owner with all their information. That relationship is important. Drag owner ID to owner ID of the owner's table. And again, enforce referential integrity. We don't have patients without owners. Now it makes sure that nobody tries to enter or accidentally mistypes the owner ID to someone that does not exist as a owner that's registered with our company. Now, is anybody referencing vendor ID? Let's see here. Veterinarians, no. Appointments, patients, owners. Oh, treatment number. Oh, I would have thought treatment number would have been associated with a vendor ID. I guess I don't know. Do we not have that relationship established for these two tables? Let's see, treatment cost, treatment number. Oh, there we go. Treatment number is associated with this table, treatment number, treatment costs, enforcing referential integrity. So whenever you can, you do want to enforce referential integrity and try to rearrange the boxes so there's no crossing lines, just to be confusing. Now, is there anyone referring to our veterinary vendor ID anywhere? Vendor name. I would have thought that would be under treatment number. Oh, are they referencing something here? Veterinary ID, product type. I guess I have a table. I'm not sure how he's related to the other tables unless I'm missing something. I would think it's somehow associated with a treatment. They have product type. Well, I guess I'll leave that relationship out of there. I'll have to go back and see if there's a relationship missing. But you see how these relationships are important for keeping all this data properly referring to valid information. Without referential integrity, I might type in a value that has no valid owner or no valid patient. Question?
What happens if you drag it backwards from treatment number and treatment cost to appointments and select referential integrity? Have the one-to-many relationship reversed?
Which treatment number here?
Yep.
Drag it to where?
To treatment number and appointments. And create your...
I already have that. You should have that.
Well, you drag it that way, but I'm saying what happens if you drag it the other way?
Oh, the same thing. I can delete that, and I can drag it the other way. The same thing will happen. Yeah, so it doesn't matter which direction you drag it.
Alright.
Now, let's see. The treatment, I'm wondering, well, that's the vendors. Treatment, is there vendors somewhere I'm missing? Where is the vendor associated with the treatment? But don't worry about that. At least we see these. One thing about referential integrity, it has to be the same data type. If I make this an integer or a number, and I try to refer to the owner by a name or a short text, it's going to break on me. Will not work if I don't have the same data type. You will run into this. You will be asked to do this on the final, so pay attention. You've got to have the same data type or it will break. Put a number here, it better be a number here. If you have a string here or a name, it better be a name here, not a number. Or it'll say, mismatched data type, and a very scary error message when you try to enforce referential integrity. That is the relationship part of the databases. On Monday, I will be reviewing more, or mainly, Excel, because on the final, it's going to be both Excel and Access. On Monday, I'll be doing a little practice with Excel, and then going over some Access as well. The final, let's see, let's check real quick on Navigator until I get it right. Do you know where to see your final schedule? You go over to Navigator, go down to schedules. Right? Or no, let's get that. Yeah, fall. Final schedule right there. And we zoom in on that. Oh, we don't even have to zoom in here. I have fundamental computers 3 to 4 on Thursday. If that doesn't work for you, you can come 11 to 12 on Friday. And vice versa. If any of your friends are in section 2, they don't want to wait till the last final on Friday, they are welcome to come to this final on 3, but they're not going to be able to set your computer unless they get here first. And if there's an issue, like you really wanted to use your computer, you will get priority because this is your section. But you will be allowed to come early. I'll let you know that on Monday as well. So that's your final exam schedule for all your courses. You can come to either section. If you prefer to wait because you have some heavy duty final that on Thursday, I'm fine with you coming on Friday. All right, have a great day. See you at chapel.